Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to Science Sundays. Today we're excited to welcome Professor Nicole Kraft from the School of Communication. She is a professor of journalistic practice there, and she is also the director of the Sports and Society. Sports and Society. I got confused about science. Maybe. Anyway, Sports and Society Initiative. So here in the College of Arts and Sciences, we are trying to push the frontiers of knowledge, and we're trying to share that with our professional colleagues through journals and conference presentations, and we share it with our students through our teaching, and we share it with the public in events like this. And so we're delighted that you're here to be part of this, and let's welcome Professor Kraft.
How is everybody? Great. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about something that is near and dear to my heart, and that is journalism. Since this is about trust, I thought you might wonder why you should trust me in terms to be here and talk with you. As John mentioned, this is who I am. I'm a professor of practice here at Ohio State in the School of Communication. My focus is journalism. I do news writing and sports writing. I also head our Sports and Society Initiative. I'm also a sports writer, so I work for the Associated Press. I work for Forbes. I do a lot of things I do game coverage, and I also write on sports media. In my previous life, though, I was a newspaper reporter. I worked covering politics and government. I was a congressional press secretary. I worked in the NBA, and I have a book out, a few of them, Always Get the Name of the Dog, and a new one coming out called Storytelling Beyond the Scoreboard. I made my first newspaper when I was 8, so you can do the math. That was 1976. It was called the Bicentennial Times. I carried it to my neighbors. It was one sheet of construction paper, and I shared it with them because, you know, that's what you do with news. And but this is what I do now. So I interview coaches and I interview players. But more importantly, I get to work with students who are extraordinary and who, thank God, still want to be journalists, which is really all I can ask of them. So I'm curious, raise your hands if you trust journalism. Oh, I knew I was with my people. I'm so happy to see you all. But I'm curious, what exactly is journalism? What do you think it is? So just give me just a couple words that you think journalism is. Report the truth, okay? Now, truth has become fluid, hasn't it?
First draft of history.
First draft of history, I love that. Yes, give me one more.
Perspective.
Perspective, that's very interesting, and we do provide perspective for people. But what journalism actually is, and some of this I think you probably expect, but some of it might surprise you, is we find and share new information that people want to know. Here's an example of something that we probably all wanted to know about recently, especially those who live in Wineland Park. When you want to know what's going on in your community, you turn to journalism. We also present news accurately and fairly, and notice I didn't say unbiased, because what we actually do is follow this, which is the SPJ Code of Ethics, and we adhere to an ethical framework that we seek truth, we minimize the harm to people that we report on and about, we act independently, and we are accountable and transparent. Now, this is what we aspire to. It was written in 2014. It's being updated now. We don't always achieve it, and we're going to talk about how that's kind of compromised trust as we know it. But we educate the public on some key issues. Some people might be confused about healthcare and what this means, and I know I've been paying a lot of attention to whether or not Congress is going to get it together to help people who need help, and the news is going to help us understand that. We provide context and clarity to different stories, so when we see jobs data, what does that mean? How can we analyze it in a meaningful way so that people will understand what these numbers mean to their lives? We're focusing on important topics that people need to know about. I don't know how many of you saw this story that the Columbus Dispatch did recently on attacks by dogs on people. I don't know if you knew this, but up until recently, your dog could kill one person and it wouldn't get euthanized. I think that's extraordinary, and apparently the Dispatch did too. So they did an investigative piece that changed state law. It's one of many stories that the Dispatch has done that changed state law. So there's a lot of changes that come out of journalistic endeavors. And then we help the people see and understand what goes on around them. And right now, we have never been at a more significant moment of needing to understand, of needing to recognize what truth is and how it serves us in the society in which we have so many questions and there's so much confusion. Journalism matters. I can't help but notice that many of you are of my age group and maybe more experienced than me. And so some of this may recognize this impeach Nixon. I mean, there is no impeach Nixon, right, without the media's involvement in that. We're going to talk about that in a second. But democracy relies on informed voters. It relies on people who know what issues are. It relies on them to understand the world around them. It relies on them to have faith that they are being told truth. And when that is compromised, we are in a very dangerous space. It also helps people understand their communities better. So a lot of times people are focused on what's happening at the national level, but who lives in Clintonville? Anybody? All right, anybody heard all the complaints about the bike trail that they just put in? All right, I'm on that bike trail. They're right. It's death-defying. I need to understand how it came to be the way it is. That's what journalism has helped me do. God, shout out to Cliff Wiltshire and the Clintonville Spotlight for keeping me posted there. So that's right. Let's hear a round of applause for that amazing publication. And let's not forget that power has to be checked and balanced. And that is what the founders intended when they put the First Amendment in. It was, we have a free press so that there is someone to pay attention to government doing the people's business. And that has never been more important probably than it is today. Thomas Jefferson famously said this, at least we think he did. This wasn't on the internet, so we're not sure. Were it left to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers or newspapers without government, I should not hesitate a moment to prefer the latter. That was how important journalism was to the founders, that it was important that government be checked, that items be validated before they go out and be disseminated to the people randomly. And that was the role that we fulfilled. This is what journalism is. It is democracy. And if we don't have it, and we don't have a press that we can trust, and we don't have faith that media is at least giving us the information that will allow us to make the most informed decisions, then democracy itself has very little chance of survival. And that's what we're striving for now, is to make sure that this information pathway continues for all of you, so that we can continue to have the democracy that I think we're all pretty much used to and enjoying. Let's think about how journalism has evolved. So this is kind of a brief history about where journalism came from and how we got to where we are today. You might recognize this device. That's right, it's a printing press. Now, we cannot minimize, of all the things that were created in all of humankind, the printing press allowed the dissemination of fixed medium ideas across time and space. That's a pretty amazing concept. And it changed the way that we transmitted information from oral history to fixed medium history. The same way the American Revolution probably doesn't happen without some aspect of media being involved. You can thank Benjamin Franklin for a lot of things. You can thank Thomas Paine. And then thinking about the post-revolution period, the Federalist Papers, and how we were able to convey ideas about the Constitution, all of this was reliant on a form of press. It is the first draft of history. Who said that before? Someone said, thank you for bringing that up. So, you know, this is how we find out not only what happens now, but what happened before. And what's the line? Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. Well, we need to know what happened. It can't all be conveyed by word of mouth. As we're seeing now, word of mouth is not serving us especially well when it comes to certain topics, that people have beliefs that don't appear to have value or be based in truth. So once we have things that are in a fixed medium written by people who respected the need to tell a narrative truth, now we have an understanding of where we've come from to know where we're going. We didn't do it great all the time. I don't know if you guys recognize this. This is the New York Journal by William Hearst. Yellow journalism, it's been a real thing. I mean, since the beginning of time, we have been spinning, we have been telling stories, we have been shaping political views, we have been not necessarily focusing on truth as it relates to the greater good, but on a specific good. And that's okay. I mean, as long as we recognize kind of where we are and where we've been, we have to also realize what it meant when journalism was trusted. So when TV first came on, radio and TV, there was a belief that the information that was being conveyed was truthful and that you could trust it. And it was really important that you could trust it because for the first time, it was being delivered into your house. So this feeling that the TV and the radio and the elements of media that could now come into your house through airwaves, we had to have a faith that it was going to be telling you the truth. Government and journalism went hand in hand. Can you believe that? If I told you that today, what would you guys say? That journalism and government go hand in hand? No, but they did. World War II does not get fought the same way without the media being embedded in it. And if you see even the movies, we just watched Saving Private Ryan the other day, and the guy talks about taking his typewriter. Media actually did that. They carried typewriters to the Battle of the Bulge. They carried typewriters on D-Day in order to make sure that they could convey the information that the public needed to have as accurately and thoroughly as possible. We trusted people like this. We had Edward R. Murrow, we had David Haberstam. These were people who brought us reality. They brought us the stories that we couldn't see ourselves. And there was a feeling that although seeing is believing, which is now questionable, but the idea that they were seeing and they were conveying to us made what they saw believable to us. Investigative journalism was on the rise. I'm sure you guys remember this, the idea of the fourth branch of government coming up. We had public opinion being formed, open records. We had Freedom of Information Act being passed in 1966. We had these guys. Are they not the coolest? Woodward and Bernstein. And yes, before you ask, they are why I became a journalist. So I read All the President's Men, and it changed my life. And all I said was, I want to be them. And then, of course, when Robert Redford came out, I'm like, I definitely want to be them now. And then there was him. I mean, Walter Cronkite was, by survey of the country, the most trusted man in America. Think about who you watch on the news today. Would you say that any of them are the most trusted people in America? Come on. No? Oh my God, I'm crushed. I mean, we're all watching the transition of CBS right now, which is, Walter Cronkite's home station. It's a really scary time when you find out that they're pulling stories off 60 Minutes, and we're having broadcasts where they're saying there's two sides to a story that many of us don't feel that there are two sides to. So this idea of trust had went away with the changes in media. So media used to be authoritative, and I don't mean in the sense that they were authoritarian, but we believed what they told us was the most important information that we needed to have. They were gatekeepers of information. There were less outlets. Who remembers when we had 3 TV channels? Yes. Now, I'm sure my kids are like, what are you even talking about? He's 25, he has no idea that that world existed. But there was a simplicity to it. We knew every day who went to the same news station, or their families went to the same news station every single day. Who did that? Yeah, and you knew that person by name, you talked about that person, you couldn't wait for them. I feel that way about Ken Jennings right now, but that's a whole other story about Jeopardy. But less narratives meant that there was more confidence in the narratives that you received, because you knew you could have faith that they were bringing you what Frederick Tapper says is the best available version of the truth. We knew that the media was going to be working in the public interest. We knew there was a level of institutional trust. All of these contributed to our security, that we were an informed electorate. How many of you feel that you are an informed electorate now? Raise your hand if you feel like you are as informed as you need to be about what is going on in the world around you. You guys, there's not a lot of you raising your hands. Now, I'm very short, and sometimes it is hard for me to see hands that don't go all the way up. But it seems to me that maybe we've lost a bit of the trust and the bit of the understanding about what news does for us and what journalists are supposed to be doing to us. And in part, it comes from this. CNN. Who watches CNN now? Okay, is CNN objective? Who thinks CNN is an objective news source? Not now. You think it ever was? Maybe in her, I love that. Maybe in her dreams, and I hope those dreams continue for you. But CNN was one thing that was very important to the shifting sands of journalism. Does anyone know what it is? It was 24 hours. And 24 hours meant Arthur Kent the Scud Stud was out there in 1991 when we did the invasion of Kuwait. But more importantly, 24 hours is a very long time to fill. And so what was news when we only had to fill up until 11:30, and then TV used to go off the air at a certain time, now we had to fill news all the time, every day, every minute of every day. And so that's when you started to get these stories that were like, well, we have video of that. Let's just run it. It doesn't really matter whether it's news that there was a tornado in some small town in Ohio. I mean, it would to us, but it doesn't matter to people in New York. Now it did because we had video of the tornado. Or now it mattered because someone tried to mail a dog in the Postal Service, which actually happened in Maine, because we had video of the dog coming out of the bag. All of these things became important. And if they have equal importance to real things, like whether or not government is doing your business in a meaningful way, you have a hard time deciphering between what is important and what is frivolous and what is entertaining. And now suddenly what is entertaining becomes more appealing to you than whether your millage is going to go up or whether the tax abatements are coming to your community or any of the other things that should be more important. The World Wide Web goes national in 1991. Why is that an issue for the rest of us? Now anybody can do it. And so we had Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, all of the social media came on, and now everybody's a publisher. So remember how we had this? Yeah, there was a gatekeeping function to this. You needed a press in order to be able to disseminate the printed word. Yeah, I don't need a press anymore. What do I need? I need that. And now everybody's a publisher. And I can't tell the difference between the publishers that adhere to ethical standards and have a belief that the utilitarianism is the greatest need for the greatest many people, as opposed to I'm going to make as much money as possible. I can't tell the difference. And because of that, I have a really difficult time when everyone is a journalist, because they don't follow this. And this code of ethics is what separates us from the proverbial great unwashed masses with a phone. This says that I will not harm people unnecessarily. This says that I will seek the truth and report it. This says that if I make a mistake, I will acknowledge it. This says that I will not transmit information that I am not 100% sure, at least at that moment, is accurate. And this is how trust has disappeared for us. When we don't understand who's telling us information or why they're telling us information or what's motivating them to tell us information, now we can't trust the information in general. Ethics, pesky. So we have a lot of distrust with the media. It's not new, I gotta be honest with you. I mean, you can look back, 1775, they were burning newspaper offices. So it's not like anybody really felt that news was in their best interest throughout time. I mean, we had all of these different issues. Mob burned down the office of Ida B. Wells, shocking. We had stories about German corpse factories in 1917. Edward R. Murrow took, who's seen Good Night and Good Luck? Yeah, that was a pretty tormenting time for him. I mean, we didn't do ourselves any favors. Janet Cook in 1881, she wrote an amazing story about Jimmy, who was an 8-year-old heroin addict. There was just one small problem after the Washington Post ran it, and she won a Pulitzer Prize, and that was that Jimmy didn't exist. So we have a history of things. Jason Blair at the New York Times made up, like, I don't know, it was some ridiculous number. 75% of his stories were made up. In 2017, BuzzFeed publishes the Steele Diaries that turn out to be complete fabrication. So we have definitely done damage to ourselves, which has allowed these cracks to form. And you know what happens when cracks form and ice gets in them? And then suddenly we have a monetary system for journalism when we destroyed advertising that we now need to get people's eyeballs on content. It doesn't matter what the content is, it just matters that their eyeballs go there. And if they click on it, now we make money. And once this model came to be, this is when journalism really started to struggle. We also make some really big mistakes. So these guys did not commit the Boston Marathon bombing, but they made the front page of the newspaper because speed takes precedence over accuracy. That's why Ryan Lanza was announced as the killer in the Sandy Hook shooting as opposed to his brother Adam, who actually did it. It's why we get sued for defaming people, because we don't take the time to check information. We also have a very difficult time telling the difference between opinion and facts. So we think, how many of you think that you know someone who thinks that Tucker Carlson is a journalist? Who knows someone who thinks that Tucker Carlson's a journalist? Okay. Absolutely. Who thinks that people, and I'm not trying to call out Fox News, because Fox News is actually not a horrible product. Fox's pundits on TV, they are absolutely spinning a message in order to convey a certain perspective. The same way Rachel Maddow is doing it on MSNBC. It's not like this is a cottage industry for either side. But we can't tell the difference between real journalists, and I am good friends with Jake Tapper. We've known each other for a long time. I would not list him as a journalist today. I would list him more as a pundit, because his opinion comes through all the time, as opposed to some of your more, what we would consider to be more objective journalists, although objectivity is certainly a waning product. We have a very difficult time focusing on things that are not elite. So in part, we have the president we have because he was a celebrity, and we like celebrities. I'm from California. Arnold Schwarzenegger did not get elected because he was a great political leader. He got elected because he was the Terminator. So we have to understand what happens when we have this skewed perspective of the world and we think that everything happens in Washington. In fact, the most important things in your life might be happening at the University Area Commission meeting or the Clintonville Area Commission meeting or Columbus City Council. Who's been to a Columbus City Schools meeting in the last year? Do you know how much money they're spending of yours if you live in the city of Columbus? But we're not paying attention to it. We don't even know what their budget that they release to the public, 1 page. And you know what it takes to get more information? It takes a reporter being on the ground saying, I want you to break down for me what exactly is going on here. But if we only are focusing at the high level, we're missing the lowest level. Oh my God, we love clickbait. And you know why we love clickbait? I said a second ago, why do we love clickbait? Because it makes money. So every one of these ads that someone clicks on that they think, this is called an advertorial, it's advertising that looks like editorial. Every time somebody clicks on it, we get money. We used to get buku bucks from those display advertisements. Classified advertisements? Do you guys remember classified advertisements? Oh my God, we printed money with classified advertisements. And then Craigslist came around and there are no more classifieds. And we lost all of that profit. So now newspapers are trying to come up with ways to make money, and they're selling off to big businesses, and those big businesses are trying to squeeze them for a lot of money, and they're doing it in ways like this. And that's leading to this, which is there's no more reporters, or there's very few reporters. There's no editors. The Columbus Dispatch eliminated all of their copy editors. Now, what does that mean when you eliminate copy editors? They have amazing reporters. One of my former students, Sheridan Hendricks, is there. I love her. She's an incredible reporter. They have so many great reporters there. But what happens when you don't have people who are fact-checking you? Or you don't have people who are copy editing you? Lots of errors. And then what happens when you have lots of errors? People don't trust you. Then we have this. I'm sure you guys have heard about this. We have falseness, which is misinformation. So that's information that's being published that it may not be intentionally inaccurate, but it is. Then you have people who are really trying to give you bad information. That's a deliberate fabrication in disinformation. And then we have malinformation, which is when we get into propaganda and people who are trying to transmit messaging in order to get a specific train of thought. How many people think that they have experienced misinformation? How many of you feel like you've experienced disinformation? How about malinformation? Now the trick here is we don't know which is which often. And we actually don't know the difference between any of these and truth. So what we think might be truthful is actually, at best, misinformation. But at worst, it's malinformation. So, God, I'm exhausted, you guys. These are the challenges of journalism, right? So we have the rise of fake news. We have economic pressures coming in. We are not making money. We are owned by very large conglomerates. There's an oversaturation of information. I don't know where to go for anything. If I look on Instagram right now, there'll be 900,000 news sources all telling me the same, maybe different. I'm not sure. Where do I go? There's ethical dilemmas every other day, and we're not necessarily equipped to deal with them all. We have fragmentation of audience. People don't know. They're not collective in terms of where they're getting their information, so they're not collective in their understanding of what information they're getting. And then we introduced AI. Who's using AI? Admit it. Who used it recently? I used it today. It's not a bad thing, but it's presenting all sorts of challenges. As I told you guys, I work for the AP. I cover the Columbus Blue Jackets. We have a lot of hockey games, but I don't cover them all. You know how they cover them, some of them? With AI. So there's a game, at least 2 games every month, where they will actually write it from New York by putting the box score into an AI system, and it will generate a story. Yeah. You know what the worst part is? It's not bad. It's a pretty accurate, it's a very accurate story, and it's actually fairly well written. So there's certain positives to AI. It's going to help. It helps students be better at spelling and grammar. It can get a lot of help that way. Saves a lot of time. I have it write emails sometimes. I had it write, my son is in charge of social media for the Maryland football team. He has it write Instagram posts. It's an amazing resource. But it's also threatening journalism. It's threatening journalism in a big way because people just think they can create things with AI and it will be just the same as having a reporter do it. But you know where AI gets its information? From the internet. And so it's scraping all of it. The facts, the misinformation, the disinformation, the malinformation, and it's putting it all together. And then it presents it to you in a way that's supposed to be factual. But we don't know what factual is anymore. So, where is trust today? How many of you trust the media now? We've gone through. Oh God, like no one's left. None of you? Oh, okay, well, let's see if we can restore some faith here. Well, this isn't going to do it for you because this is what Gallup found about trust in media. So you might notice there in 1975, what do you think was happening in 1975? Nixon. Well, I mean, now it was Ford at that point because Nixon had been kicked to the curb in part because of the Washington Post. We had the Pentagon Papers case. We had all sorts of amazing fights that journalism did. And everybody thought this was the greatest thing that we'd ever gotten. Everybody subscribed to newspapers, hundreds of thousands of newspaper subscriptions. Then it kept going down and down and down as we began to chip away at all those different faiths aspects of it. So what was a great deal of belief in journalism goes down to 28% in 2025. And who had no faith at all has risen to 34%. So now more people have no faith in journalism than actually have full faith in journalism, and we have some people in the middle there. It's also definitely driven by politics. So you can see on the left, Republicans have a much less favorable view of journalism. 62% have no faith at all versus 9% having no faith over here. Democrats, 51% of Democrats have a great deal of faith in journalism, only 8% of Republicans. Now, I'm not asking anyone, I used to work for Republicans, I was Republican press secretary. This is not meant to be in any way an escalation of any political divisiveness. But it has to be a recognition about the messaging that we're receiving. And across all of the messaging that we're receiving, we don't know where to turn for truth. And if we don't know where to turn for truth, what do we do? What do we seek out? What do you seek out, assuming you still seek out information? If you're not sure what truth is, what do you look for?
Something that affirms your own belief system.
Exactly. You look for that which affirms your beliefs. And as long as you can do that and find something that appears reputable, that becomes truth. And that is why we have this distrust of the term media, because it's not, I don't trust media, that liberal losers that they are, when you're on the left side of this, or I'm sorry, my left side, your left side, I guess. What I'm looking for is whoever agrees with me is right. And that is a very dangerous space to occupy. Age is certainly coming into play here. How many of you have someone under the age of 30 in your life? How many of them read newspapers? God love you. You're my new favorite person right there. Yeah, I mean, so, and I'll say to them, I teach journalism, you guys, and every first thing, I'm going to meet those people on Tuesday, and the very first question, I'm going to say hi, I'll have brownies for everyone, and then I will say to them, tell me what you read, and they will say, what? I read Instagram, or I read Twitter, or I read TikTok, or I watch TikTok, and I'm like, that's not what, someone creates content. And they don't have a concept of that. They believe that social media is the creator of the content, but it's not. Someone creates the content and puts it on social media. And if you can't tell the difference between that which is reputable and that which isn't, or you can't know to go to the original sourcing, you know, I go to the AP, I go to the AP every morning. It's the very first thing I do. Now, I'm biased because they pay my salary, but I go there because I believe that they're going to give me truthful information. If I went onto TikTok, which I don't even have TikTok, but if I went onto Instagram or X or Facebook, now I'm seeing what people think I should see. And the algorithm is driving what I see versus my feeling that I want to see all the news. And I can skip over headlines when I'm on the AP or on the BBC or on the Guardian or any reputable news source or what we would consider to be mainstream. But that's a lot of effort. It's a lot of work. Sorry, thank you. All right, so this is a huge challenge for us, the attention economy. And the attention economy says that facts and profits are now in they're conflict with each other. They're fighting each other because facts are boring to a lot of people and they're not making money. So if we are concerned about making money and we are super concerned with profits, then we are not really concerned with a factual foundation. And so we have this quest to get attention of all of the people, as many people as possible. And we want them to spend as much time as possible on our site because that is going to give us money. And the only way to keep them there is to have stories about Taylor Swift. Because if we have stories about stuff that's boring, about the jobs report, or about people, about food insecurity, or any number of topics that are supremely important, unwed mothers, I mean, we could keep going on. That's not interesting to people. It's not fun. And so they leave. And if they leave, I don't make money off of them. And if I don't make money off of them, why bother? And now we have completely lost ourselves in the doom scroll. So facts are competing constantly with emotion. And this hedonistic aspect of our news consumption. I either want to be super excited by what I read, I barely want to be happy about what I read. How many of you read stories just to be happy? Like you read, I read nice stories. Like that's the Steve Hartman kind of moment of on the road, right? It's just to make you feel good. We don't usually seek those stories out, to be honest with you. We want things that have conflict to them. That gets us excited. We want things where bad things happen to other people because they're not us. We have all sorts of quests that will connect with our receptors. But if we are connecting with receptors that it's like eating too much candy, right? Like that gets me, it's a receptor and I get really hyper by it, but I don't ever feel satiated and I never have nutrition. And that's what we are consuming now as we go through this kind of cycle of news coming at us constantly. Outrage is what spreads. And the outrage is driving us to a doom scroll. And these platforms are rewarding us not for being smarter, but just simply for hanging out longer. And we're getting really, really confused. And that's why we are where we are. So, we're influencer driven, we're profit driven, we're politically driven. We are hosed, people. We're eroding all institutional trust. Maybe not. Oh, then we close. So, say goodbye to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette effective May 3rd. They will be the largest city in America with no daily newspaper. And they did not move online. They are eliminating every aspect. Now, this is a loaded topic because some of you may know, they unionized and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette did not like that. And so basically this is their way of saying, we will fix your wagon and we will just close. So they are indeed fixing the wagon of the unionized people, but they are also fixing Pittsburgh, who now will not know anything that's going on. Now, it's not going to be a news desert for long. There will be other entities that will rise up, but it will not have the cachet of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, which has been around for a long time, had extremely high quality reporters, had Pulitzer Prize winning reporters, cartoonists, photographers, all of the people who were super committed to the public good. That's going to be much more fragmented, and so there's going to be a small startup like Clintonville Spotlight for Pittsburgh, and what's going to be the penetration of that compared to the hundreds of thousands of people that this publication reached? Far, far fewer. So now we have continued fragmentation. So we got to rebuild the trust. We have absolutely got to figure out a way, and it's not impossible. There are ways to rebuild trust, and let's kind of think about what some of them are, because what does the public really want? And they may not acknowledge this, what they want all the time, but this is fundamentally what they seek out. They want accuracy. They want to know that we are telling them the best available version of the truth at the time that the truth becomes available. That is not an unreasonable expectation. But we have to figure out the receptors that help people connect with the truth when it does become available to them, which helps with explanation. So it's not just suitable anymore to tell people, get your kid vaccinated. I don't mean to bring up a sore subject here, but you no longer can say that, right? That used to be a universal truth for us. Your kid was born, they got vaccinated. We know for a fact that that is not going to be the universal truth anymore. So we have to explain the why. We have to explain the how. We have to explain the ramifications. And we have to do it objectively enough that we do present the sides that need to debate each other. There are people who believe, no matter what your view is of vaccines, that kids have gotten too many vaccines, especially at the same time. Maybe there's other science that we could be exploring here, and I know that science is a loaded term at this point. Science and journalism, who knew that those would be the two things we have the least amount of faith in? We have to be independent, and right now we're not. We are beholden to political figures, we are beholden to large corporations, we are beholden to hedge funds, we are being driven by profits as opposed to utilitarianism, and all of this is causing a struggle within the framework of our trust system, but if we regain it, now we are much more likely to be able to be accountable to the people who we serve. And this accountability is what will help us increase the trust level that people have in us. They ultimately want a level of transparency. They want for us to know Where did this story come from? Why did you do this story? How did you verify this information? What is still unknown? What is it that we can solve? How can we fix this? We can't just dump problems on people anymore. We have to come up with solutions for them, and we have to help them navigate those solutions. That is where journalism is headed. Now, that means that we are taking sides on topics that historically we would have been relatively impartial on. But really, there is no side that says that people don't deserve housing. There is no side that says people don't deserve food. There is no side that says that children don't deserve an education. So we have to figure out ways in order to support our community, and those efforts they're actually taking place right now. Another aspect we have to do is be independent from power. Now, I showed this image because I don't know how many of you know that the Pentagon has now required that if you do not sign off on their agreement of what information can be released, that you cannot cover the Pentagon anymore. And so there's like 9 people who sit in the Pentagon briefing room now, all of whom are supporters of Pete Hegseth. How much faith do you have in what's coming out of there? That's not a possibility. So we need to make sure that we can rebuild this level of trust that is independent. We need to be very clear about this separation of opinion and fact, and what is truthful reporting versus what is my opinion. It is not that there is no place for opinion. People need analysis of information. But when we start to substitute this idea that new information immediately comes from a biased standpoint, now we have no option of viewing the circumstances in a way that will allow us to make decisions about that which is important. We have to explain and not just break news. So this is the East Palestine fire. That was an amazing story that was covered incredibly well. But what would have happened if, and we do this all the time, it's called parachute journalism. We hop in, we report, and then we leave. Those people are suffering every day. There are cancers popping up. There is ground contamination. Those buildings have not been replaced. This is a living, breathing story that we must continue to be engaged in. School shootings, natural disasters, anything you can think of. We cannot simply come in, report, and leave. We must invest in communities and be part of rebuilding processes. That is what will enable trust to continue to be built, and it is happening in East Palestine. We need to represent real people. People are not, this is going to shock you, people are not just hungry at Thanksgiving. But how many of you read stories about hunger at Thanksgiving and food insecurity? How many read it? How many read one last week? What'd you read it in? Do you remember?
Yeah. I think it was something about CRC providing food banks.
I love that.
So indirectly.
Yes. But we hear about these topics once a year, right? Or you hear about it when school budgets. So Columbus City Schools has been in the news, but it's gone away now. I mean, there's all sorts of things that are happening constantly to real people every single day. People are suffering. And we have to be accountable to those stories every single day. And we have to recognize that the needs of these people should be paramount over what our president might be saying about his grand ballroom or any of these other stories that are not unimportant, but they are not the most important thing that we cover. And we will establish more trust if we continue to work toward representing the people that we cover. We got to acknowledge that we have made mistakes, and not some tiny little blurb on the inside of page 2 of a newspaper that no one reads. We have to really acknowledge when mistakes are made, and we have to recognize that people lose trust in us when we make a mistake or put someone on the front page of a publication who then gets acquitted, and we never mention the acquittal, or we never mention that their charges were kicked, or any number of things that happen. So the more that we can recognize the need for people to know how we do our job, what we do well, where we have challenges, these will be ways that we can build trust, because we've got to keep showing up. And this is becoming harder and harder because of the contraction of the news sources, the contraction of the money, the reduction in reporters, the reduction in editors. Sometimes the job is really hard, like this. When our students were pepper sprayed in the face during the George Floyd protests in 2020. This is not an easy job to do. And those reporters got pepper sprayed, they went back, they cleaned up, they poured milk in their eyes. By the way, that helps with pepper spray. And then they went back out, because that's what we do. We go where the news is. We go where people need information. We go where other people don't get to go in order to make sure that you know what you need to know to be informed. It's pretty similar to science, you guys. Now, again, I know this is a bad word at this point, but we're evidence-based, we are method-driven, we have review, we are updating constantly, and we are honest about our uncertainty, and this is where trust comes in. We don't know everything, but we are constantly striving to get the information that you need to maintain your role in sustaining democracy. And that's the sole purpose of what journalism is. There are some real concrete examples of things that are building trust. So this one, great name, right? The Trust Project. It's an international consortium of organizations, and these are their 8 tenets. They want to make sure that every publication adheres to these, and the ones that have signed on do that, to make sure that they are identifying some of these topics we've talked about: diversity of voices, expertise of journalism, best practices, references, actionable feedback. This is a commitment that news entities are making in order to follow the protocol that theoretically will build trust back into our media consumption. There's an organization called Solutions Journalism, and their focus is on looking at large-scale topics and developing solutions that can then be enacted. So again, it's not, hey, there's a homeless population in Portland, Oregon. It's, there's a homeless population, and let's bring the community together so we can start to work on solutions, and these are the solutions we're going to work toward, and this is how we're going to measure them, and these are the metrics that we're going to look at. This is what journalism is evolving into. Now, it goes against our primary training. My primary training was to be an observer. My job was to get information, provide it to you, and you make a decision. We can't live like that anymore. There's too much at stake for us to stay on the sidelines of really important topics. You guys have a job too. You got to be discerning about what you consume, and you got to check it. You cannot take one source and go, oh my God, can you believe this? Which is what I think every day when I hear things. That's my goal in life, is to find something new. And then I forward it on to someone, whether I check it or not. I don't have any, I think it's true. I saw it on the internet. It's got to be true. Well, it's not always true. And we have to look at whether or not this comes from a reputable source. Is there multiple sources of it? Does it come from something that is a mainstream source, or am I reading it on Reddit? Like, where am I getting my information? Do the photos make sense? If I see a shark swimming on the freeways of Houston, I have to question that, even though that picture has been circulated for a long time. And I use this as a very sad example, sad for me. I'm a huge Grateful Dead. My husband's here. We are huge Grateful Dead people, and really sad about the death of Bob Weir. But the first thing I saw on Twitter was that Bob Weir had died, and from a guy with 13 followers. Now, am I going to call my kid and make him sad and tell him that Bob Weir has died based on a guy with 13 followers? No. I'm going to check somewhere else. And then I see it on NBC. And I have faith that NBC has fact-checked this story. And I have faith, and I believe this, because this is what trust in media looks like. And if I don't do the work to contribute to this rebuilding of trust, then I am just as culpable as the people who commit disinformation, misinformation, malinformation. Trust is really important, you guys. I cannot stress enough that we've got to be in this together to work on this element of rebuilding the trust that we have in our journalistic enterprises. Because cool things happen. That was amazing. But other things happen. Horrible things happen, and we have to know what's real. And Boston Marathon doesn't go the way it's supposed to. And there are insurrections in our country. And our city council people get pepper sprayed during protests. And there are shootings at schools. And there's a COVID epidemic. And our life as we know it changes. And what happens if you don't have some reliable source that you can go to find out why and how and what? And what information do you need to be informed, to contribute as a member of this society? If we don't have that, then there is no society anymore, and there is no democracy. This is why I teach journalism. Because I need students to become the people who will transform our future for all of us. But the real reason that we need journalism is we have to know what's happening. And without it, we never will. What questions do you have? I don't know if there's a microphone or... Yes.
I wrote it down so I didn't forget.
Yay. Okay.
You mentioned, and I really agree that trust should be earned, right? By honestly communicating uncertainty. But a lot of the folks in my life, I would argue, uncertainty comes across as weakness now. And so they tend to believe things that are said with some gusto, whether or not they're true at all. What is your take on how do we talk about that?
These are not easy conversations to have. And so, you know,
Repeat
part of
the question.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for reminding me. The question was that we have people who are seeking certainty, and to them, certainty is truth, whether or not it is actual truth. And how do we combat that within the framework of our own lives? And in truth, it is the small drips to continue. It's active listening. So in some ways, most people want to be heard. And so if you're going to be at your family dinner and someone says, and I'm just picking two random sides, which you may recognize, you know, I think that Donald Trump is the greatest president we've ever had, and you're like, I think Donald Trump is a moron. Those two arguments, that's a message that isn't being received by either, right? And the whole idea of communication is you have a sender, you have a receiver, and you have a message. Well, if the sender sends a message up here and the receiver is down here, then the message will never mean anything. And so the message has to come to both receptors. So acknowledging what you can acknowledge. You know what, I'm going to acknowledge the fact that Donald Trump has certainly revolutionized the political environment, and I can certainly see how many people are embracing his viewpoint, or you know, talk about vaccines. You have to find a space where you can actively listen to people. I hear what you're saying. This is my perspective, and this is where it comes from. And slowly, it's not going to be quick, you're trying to bring the message to the point that it's at least within the framework that some aspect of it is going to touch each other, even if the receptors may not be equal.
Thank you.
Yes?
What are your feelings about the efforts going on to selectively rewrite history? And are there publications or journalists that you have your faith?
I mean, yes, I was just taking a breath. The question was how I feel about the rewriting of history, which in truth has been done since the beginning of time. So this is not a new phenomenon. And what publications do I look at? I triangulate all information. So, I mean, my students ask me, like, how do you consume news? So the first thing I do is read the Dispatch every morning. Now, is it 100% truthful in your view? We can argue that till the end of time. I do know their news is 2 days old in the newspaper, so I read it online. I mean, I do a lot of things. I read the AP. I listen to NPR every morning. I read The Guardian. I read the BBC. For me, it's not one source. It's a collection of sources. And I also read things that would be considered to be biased. I do look at Fox. I do look at The Nation. I do look at Bulwark. I look at everything, because if I'm seeing trends in information, then I have more belief that things are accurate. And I think that's what we have to do. I know I take an hour out of the first hour of my day in order to do that. Not everyone can do that, but it's some aspect of our lives. In terms of reinventing history, we've been reinventing history since there was history. So, you know, and if the next political wave that comes is going to rewrite history in a different way. The key for us is to pay attention to what is happening. You know, the people, my grandparents had no doubt that the Holocaust happened, right? They were very clear that that was a real thing. As distance gets between us and a circumstance, things begin to fade. So the continuation of the narratives that are truthful, then factual and based, that's what we have to continue. And the second that we stop continuing our belief that moving truth forward is an important part of the storytelling of humanity, that's when we're going to be really lost. Yes?
I know that younger generations are constantly entering into the new world. And as a young person, I want to know how I can be better informed so that I can make correct and smart decisions for the future.
Get off of social media. I mean, in all seriousness, and I'm someone who taught Twitter. I won awards for teaching Twitter, you guys, and I'm not even on Twitter hardly at all anymore.
Maybe repeat the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. What can someone who's young do to be better informed in terms of their consumption of information? I mean, social media is an incredible tool. I too have connected with friends from high school. Who's done that? Right? Yeah, we've all done something cool like that. But what we've lost track of is what is reliable. And so getting off of social media, getting off of the doom scroll, getting off of this idea that news is being presented to you in microseconds, That is going to help you dramatically. We have to teach news literacy in schools. That is 1,000%, starting in, I say K-12 education, but it's more K-3, K-8, K-5, K-8. We have got to teach the consumption of fact-based news within those structures, because the only way we will teach people that that is an important resource for them is for them to utilize it in a space where education takes place. And we can argue constantly. I mean, when I was in school, it was funny, my kid and I are in school, obviously 30 years apart. We both stopped learning history at like the Civil War. Do you guys know, like in high school, we have to stop doing that. Like we have to start working backwards from what history is, the most recent history, and allow people to start to consume the information that will build their understanding of history within the K-5, K-8 space. Yes?
How do you square a responsibility for objective truth with CNN's partnership with probability markets like Polymarket and Kalshi, which have by nature uncertainty built into them?
I don't know enough about that to be able to give you a solid. The question was about CNN's involvement with an entity that is functioning by probability markets. You know, CNN is an interesting animal. Headline news is headline news, and I respect the headlines it provides. The rest of it is pretty much punditry to a great degree, and my really wonderful friend Phil Mattingly works there. I adore him, but you know, I'm looking at small pockets of CNN as being still an objective news source, or at least one that is focused on that kind of utilitarian view. The other parts of it are aimed to get eyeballs and a bunch of pundit speaking. So I think that kind of dovetails with what they're doing, and I respect that they've gone full bore into that, but it means that I need to seek information elsewhere. Yes?
A few years ago, a story broke. It was the Panama Papers, and I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
And they dropped a few names that night. It was the lead story, and then the next day, they had left none. And so, why did that happen, and what responsibility did they have to keep that story alive?
I mean, you could say that about any number of stories. I don't know that it went dark in a day. I mean, that story had its probably 6 months of life. But the challenge is that we are always looking for a bright, shiny object to keep you watching. So how many of you watch the news? How many of you have noticed national news? Who watches national news? And what is like the second segment, do you know, almost every time, second or third segment? Weather. And it's not just weather. What is it? It's first warning weather. Like the weather's going to kill us. Either the white death is coming, fire is coming, heat is coming, something horrible is going to happen to us with the weather. I'm not sure when weather became weaponized, but I watch it. I actually love Lonnie on CBS, but the goal is not to inform us. The goal is to keep us there, and I'm going to keep watching until you tell me if I'm going to survive the tornadoes in Kansas. Because I'm not sure. They could be heading to Ohio. I'm really not sure. And so I can only sustain. Those people in California with the fires in Palisades, their houses are still not there. You know, now we got a story about them. Why do we get a story about them over the last week or so? It's the anniversary. And that's it's part of what we cover, anniversaries of things. Although we stopped covering, I noticed this year, the Kennedy assassination. We no longer cover Pearl Harbor. There's certain things that have now dropped off our radar. The Titanic was big for a while around the 100th anniversary, right? Now that's dropped off our radar. We don't really pay attention to that. It's my birthday. That's why I care about that April 14th date. But there's only so much attention that we can pay before the public stops paying attention. And when the public stops paying attention, so do we.
That was a huge story. They were to implicate 100 plus names that had been researched for months.
Let's think about all of the huge stories that are out there. Where is Edward Snowden now? That's a huge story too. Is PRISM still around? Anyone know if your library books and phone calls are still being recorded by the government? Come on, people. We have some needs here. We need to know. We don't know a lot of things that we don't know because we can only pay attention to things for this long, but the story's this big. So we pay attention. Sometimes we check back in. And the Columbus Dispatch used to have 50 reporters. They have like 18 now. There's only so much time and space that we can occupy with 18 people, and only so much coverage we can provide. Yes?
In this complex world, most things have two sides to the story. What do you think the obligation of journalism is to present both sides of the story so that the listener can decide which side they agree with? what the facts are on both sides as opposed to just one?
It depends on the story. I don't believe some stories do have both sides. There is no story that says that children shouldn't have food. None. There is no argument you can make for me. There is no argument that you can make for me that says that people don't deserve housing. There's no argument you can make for me that says that it's okay that certain populations die because they don't have health care. I will not buy any of those arguments. And so, yes, do you need to know whether or not Columbus City Schools should be increasing your taxes or not increasing your taxes? Yeah, we can debate that all day. I'd like to know what they're doing with the money. I'd like more information on that before I agree to another tax increase. But there's certain topics that do not have another side to them. And one of our challenges has been we have presented both sides. Just the new CBS anchor whose name has escaped me, I think I'm mentally blocking it because he's not been good. I mean, he went out with January 6th and said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, there were fine people on both sides. And I'm like, oh, dude, I got to push back on that one. I'm aware of that, but that's different than a reporter saying that. And so when we covered the anniversary of that, my friend Phil Mattingly, who was actually on crutches that day, running for his life in the tunnels underneath the two congressional buildings, like there is no other side to that story. So I believe that when it's time to tell it, we tell it, but there's other ones that there is not two sides to every story. Yes?
So at which point did like politics become like so central to news? Like I feel like 90% of news today is like politically motivated or it is about politics.
The question is, when did politics become central to news? 1787? Seriously, the ratification of the Constitution when they said, and the First Amendment, fun fact, go to the Constitution Center in Philadelphia, was not the First Amendment. It was actually the Third Amendment. The First Amendment, first two had to do with how much money Congress got, and they didn't ratify those. And so the First Amendment rose to the top. But the First Amendment gives you 5 freedoms, right? And one of them is a free press. And the reason that we needed a free press, the first 5 words are so important. Congress shall make no law. You cannot censor the press on behalf of the government, is what that says. So they felt that it was arguably one of the 5 most important freedoms that you would have with religion, petitioning the government, assembly, speech. So it's been a long time. Yes?
I think, just from my perspective, I've heard that Herbert Walker Bush kind of signed off on something that kind of allowed some of the pundit journalism and opinion-based journalism to kind of start and kind of build. I don't know if that's entirely true, but from your perspective, is there any way to kind of put the genie back in the bottle?
I mean, the genie hasn't been in the bottle. I mean, Hearst and Pulitzer employed, opinionated journalists. And I mean, the biggest awards we have are named after one of the people who was the most prolific yellow journalist that will ever exist. So, people like opinions. People ask me for my opinion all the time, and I tell them, I'm a reporter. I don't have an opinion. But other people, but pundits do. So I don't think there is any, the bottle's never existed. The genie has always been free. And so now we can't really differentiate them because there's very few people of the Walter Cronkite variety who were like, that's the way it is. Now it's like, this is what I think it is, and you should think this way too. And I think those two things are the same, and they're not. That's what the public is saying at this point. Yes?
So let's take 2 more questions.
2 more questions. You're one of 2.
Morning, I go through like news feeds just to see what I'm interested in. Then I'll go back and go look it up, look at my source and see what I want to read, like who's got something about this to find out, okay, this might be more trustworthy. But it seems like maybe I should find out who the owner and who the editors are. Is that pertinent today?
I mean, well, the owners, if you're going to tell me the Washington Post is the same today under Jeff Bezos as it was under Katharine Graham, I will fight you on that. So, I mean, ownership is significant. The Dispatch was owned by the Wolf family. Trust me, they had their own agenda when they were owned by the Wolf family. There's no doubt. But now they are owned by a conglomerate that has a completely different agenda. So, yes, I think that ownership, more so than editors, editors, it's really difficult. You'd have to be really in the weeds. No, not always. I mean, it would just be difficult for me. I couldn't tell you what the Dispatch is doing based on their editor, who's a fine, wonderful person, Mike Shearer. He is not representative of the Gannett dynamic to me.
Editor is not a good way of defining.
I just think you'd have to go so far in the weeds that you would, yeah. I mean, I don't know 90% of the editors, and I know a lot of editors. All right, I guess we have one more question. Okay.
You're a sports.
He said right here, so I have to go.
You're a sports journalist. Comment on the sports reporting by The Athletic.
Oh, I think the Athletics. I think the Athletics outstanding. It's owned by the New York Times now. It was purchased a few years ago. I have Aaron Portzline is one of my greatest friends, and I respect him more than words can say. I think that they are not the future of sports journalism, because that's going to change in the next 25 minutes probably. But I do think that they are doing the reporting that needed to be done, that Sports Illustrated used to do, and that ESPN, when it first created a magazine, used to do. The only entity that's really doing that at this point on a consistent basis is The Athletic. Can we try one more question? Do we?
Yes, one more.
Okay, one more.
Could you speak briefly about nonprofit media entities that are not funded by the government? Do they still?
Well, nobody's funded by the government. You can ask our NPR friends here. I see the news director of WOSU here, so you can ask him how that's going. I mean, there is a rise of nonprofit news. Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Inquirer is a nonprofit news entity. Detroit has very high-profile nonprofit news entities. They are extremely ambitious. They are doing really solid work. You know, ProPublica started as a nonprofit. I'm not sure whether it still is. You know, that is certainly a void. There are people who are striving to fill the void. Is it the same as a community daily newspaper? No. And it just doesn't have the penetration. And it also, that subscription model, and I hope if you have not already subscribed to WOSU, sorry, Mark's shameless plug, you know, subscribe to WOSU. There is no better news source in truth than what we're getting on our public radio affiliates and stations. And, you know, that is an amazing model, the idea that we all own that and we all support that in a meaningful way. That's what the nonprofits are kind of going toward, that subscription model. But it's going to take people, the other thing I didn't mention that we shot ourselves in the foot on is we gave news away. Like, we used to make people pay for subscriptions. Then we're like, let's put it on the internet. This is amazing. And then people are like, why would I ever pay for this? So that we, again, contributed a lot to our own demise. That is a step toward reclaiming our autonomy. And they are terrific sites, but it's going to take an investment from all of you and all of your friends in order for us to be able to rise that up to the level that we need it to be. Thank you so much.